And we're live.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Madam Clerk. Welcome everyone to our Cleary Township Special Emergency Council meeting. And it is the 22nd of April, approximately 4 o'clock. I guess we had a little technical difficulty just getting started right at 4 o'clock, but we're happy that we have council here with us. We do have a quorum. I do want to note that Councillor Leishman contacted myself and other members as well as our clerks to advise she will not be able to join us today. But the good news is that she is feeling much better and recovering. So we're hoping that she is going to be able to join us again at another time. But for this particular meeting, she's asked to not be able to sit in, so to speak. So we'll wish her all the best and hope that she continues with her recovery. And hello there to her family. Before we get started, Council, I do have a couple of things I'd like to just say. Of course, this township and this community sends deep regrets and respect to the communities of Nova Scotia that went through a terrible tragedy over the weekend. It certainly has impacted their communities and everyone across Canada. It's an absolute tragedy. And so we send our respect and love to Nova Scotia from Cleary Township. And I'd also at this time want to acknowledge many of our first responders and frontline healthcare workers that continue to provide service to us here in Clearview and in this community here across Simcoe County. And especially I want to recognize our essential workers and our community volunteer groups that are continuing to serve us as well at this time. And so those are the brief announcements I just wanted to bring forward at this time. And we'll get started with our regular agenda. So Council, welcome. Item 1 is the approval of the agenda. Recommendation be it resolved that Council of the Township of Clearview hereby approve the agenda dated April 22nd, 2020 as presented. I'll look for a mover and seconder. Moved by Councillor Broderick, seconded by Councillor Lamers. Mr. Patterson, okay, anything further from any members of Council? Seeing none, I'll call the motion. All those in favor? Waiting for Councillor Deneen, if she's in favor. Councillor Deneen, and there she is. Okay, apparently she's having a technical difficulty. So I just want to remind all members that we will keep our hands up when we're voting and keep them right near our face. That way we can clearly see. And then when the motion's completed, then we can withdraw. And so thank you. Councillor Deneen, let's just check your audio to make sure you're okay. Hello, how are you?
There, I'm back again. Something just went completely blank on the screen. Sorry about that.
Okay, and thank you. And that is unfortunate, and that's part of the joys of using technology. So we'll all just be patient as we motor through this process. Thank you very much, Council. So we've had our approval of the agenda. The next item on the agenda is actually an update from our CIO, Steve Sage. So Mr. Sage, if you'd like to join us. Hello, Mr. Sage, nice to see you and happy that you're able to join us. Could you give us a bit of an update on the activities that the staff and your team have been doing during this COVID-19 crisis?
Yes, Your Worship, members of Council, I'd love to. I got quite a few things to update you from the county level with respect to council meeting issues. So I'm going to spend a little time focusing on that. I'm going to talk a little bit about long-term care facilities. And it's actually a success story, as the Deputy Mayor alluded to in Simcoe. So first of all, I'm going to start off with the municipality of Oro-Medonne, where the first municipality to attempt having a planning meeting virtually. They are a little bit behind Clearview. They don't have the capability to do what we're doing yet virtually. They actually did it by conference call. They have claimed that at their next meeting, they will be trying it virtually. But how they set up that meeting was they had the mayor in the council chambers on their streaming network, and then the public participation portion of the planning meeting had to be via email. And then how they handled that was they had their director of planning managing the emails as they were coming in. She was reading those emails out, and then council were asking any questions that they could over the conference call to the public. And quite frankly, the story was it worked okay. Sounds a little bit complicated, but it did work. In Oro-Medonne, they had some challenges from ratepayers groups saying that it wasn't legal. However, they got a registered letter, I believe, can't be sure on that, from Mr. Clark, Minister Clark, indicating that it was. So I just thought I'd want to brief you on that most municipalities are moving forward with public meetings, but Earl Madani, they were sort of the guinea pig. Some issues that we're having countywide and in Clearview as well around essential services. So as the weather's improving, there's some issues around lawn care, car washes, all types of exterior businesses that may or may not be allowed to open under the essential list. Depending on which municipality you talk to, there's a difference of opinion on how we're interpreting the legislation. I'm not aware of any issues here at Clearview yet. If you are, please get them to our staff and we'll try and deal with them. Most of them so far have been in the urban centers, but there are some issues around business operating the way in which some neighbors don't think they should. Give you a little story. The mayor of Newmarket phoned the mayor of Bradford and asked him why his car washers were open. Well, the mayor of Bradford and their staff believe that they can be. So then all the residents of York region were driving to Bradford for car washes because Newmarket had closed theirs. So that's how we're getting into the weeds of the legislation as what's happening across the area. Clearview wise, our staff are holding up quite well. Obviously, particularly in public works, business continuity is difficult. We're running with half a crew, which means 50% capacity council, which means 100% longer to complete tasks. It's just pure math. So street sweeping's obviously taking place, but it's going to take longer. Everything's going to take longer. But the reason that we're doing that is because of the split teams. And you just heard some comments from members of council and the premier that the Army is coming into some LTCs. Well, the reason for that is their staff are either getting symptoms or the virus or having to work such crazy hours that they can't sustain it, which is the exact reason that we split in two, as almost every municipality in Simcoe has done. But as far as our staff goes, we are starting to get into a groove with respect to the meetings and how we're going to move forward. I think there's some consideration to go back to regular meetings for council. And that means that some of the departments, particularly planning, building, clerk's department, will start ramping up the public consultation process to facilitate that. A few things countywide again, food banks. So although we have reached out, and I know the mayor has spoke to our food bank 2 or 3 times, and we're obviously discussing some issues in Creemore. But originally when the federal government provided the funds for food banks, it was to be dispersed through the United Way. That is not going well. Won't get into the details because I'm not aware of the details, but I can assure you that the county has decided to issue checks directly to the food banks due to the lack of, we'll call it speed of the United Way for some reason. Also in Simcoe County, we were having some issues with food supply for homeless people. The county and the municipalities have gone out and secured hundreds of hotel rooms for homeless, but there were some issues around food preparation, but that issue has been dealt with as well. Interesting enough, the county of Simcoe has purchased a PPE sterilizer. Stay tuned for how successful or unsuccessful that is. Other than that, I don't think I have too much more, Your Worship. I think what's starting to happen is discussions about opening up, and we're all waiting with bated breath to see what that looks like. But other than that, I'm willing to take any questions that members of council might have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. CAO. I acknowledge Councillor McKechnie. Before he does, one question I have is, perhaps Steve, you could outline for us some of the work that our bylaw department has been doing, or perhaps Pam would like to jump in and advise, because I know they've been assisting and working with the OPP as part of this as well.
Sure, Pam's much more aware of the details than me, or if you're there, Pam, I'll let you talk to that one.
And then we'll go to Councillor McKechnie or any other members of council. I'm just looking. Anybody else? Okay. Pam, please go ahead, and then we'll go to Councillor McKechnie.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the bylaw enforcement team is fielding all of the calls regarding whether or not a business is an essential service. So they're responding to those inquiries, and they're communicating with the OPP and the province in making any determinations if it's in a gray area that they're unsure. They're also responding to calls regarding social isolation. So if people are seeing a gathering of people, they're contacting the bylaw department and they're dealing with that accordingly. The OPP have indicated that they want bylaw enforcement to assist them, but should there be any charges laid, it would be the OPP doing so after their own investigations. So we're kind of the front line. We are fielding the calls and we're giving information to the public, and we're assisting the OPP as much as possible. But the ultimate enforcement of any such action under the legislation would fall to the OPP.
All right, well, thank you very much. And I want to wish our bylaw department all the luck and safety in their jobs as well. So, Councillor McKechnie, you have a question? Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. This question is for the CAO. And Steve, regarding Public Works, or basically any of the departments, currently you've got them in split shifts. I was just wondering, have you given any consideration to extending the workday and having maybe 2 shifts? Like particularly now we have longer daylight. Just thinking of having a shift start at 6 in the morning and run till 2 in the afternoon. Another shift start at 2 in the afternoon and run till 8 at night. Have you given any consideration to that in regards to Public Works or any other department? Maybe you already have, or maybe it's not feasible. Just curious.
So,
Go ahead, Steve. Yeah.
So great idea, great recommendation. As we know, we are having a significant discussion about staffing in camera. It's on the agenda. And Councillor McKechnie, short answer is yes, it's been discussed, and we will certainly make some decisions depending on the outcome of this evening's meeting.
That seems fair. Thank you. Anybody else with any other questions about COVID operations or how our township team has been functioning so far? All right, seeing none, thank you very much, Steve. I appreciate that, and I'll continue to join you at the emergency operations team meetings. And council, if you have any questions, please feel free to send to me on. I'll bring them to the team meeting anytime for you. Thank you, Steve. We'll move on with our agenda item number 2, which is disclose their pecuniary interest and general nature thereof. If anybody has any disclosures during this council meeting, I'm seeing none. So, as is our procedure, if anything comes up during the meeting, please let us know and we'll deal with it at that time. Item number 3 is our approval of the minutes of the council meeting. So we have 3, March the 16th, March the 26th, April the 7th, all 2020. I'll look for a mover and seconder on that. That's Councillor Broderick, seconded by Councillor Deneen. This is the approval of the minutes. Okay, I'm looking. Okay, we've got our mover, Broderick, seconded by Deneen. I'll call the motion. All those in favor? Is there an opposed or all in favor? Okay, thank you. Just making sure they're all up there. That motion carries. Thank you very much. Recommendation. I already read that. Business arising from the minutes. Anybody with any business arising from the minutes, please? Councillor McKechnie, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. And this question is for the clerk. And I'm looking at the March 16th minutes. And on page 2, what we did was we canceled all board and committee and council meetings to April the 5th, 2020. And we also, let me see here. We also extended the date to purchase dog tags to May the 1st, 2020. So what my question is, of course, we're going to be discussing, the council meetings today and also tax penalties today. We'll be discussing that later. But my question is, what about the board and committee meetings? Do we need an extension or a resolution from council to keep them canceled going forward? Should we have something on an agenda canceling those?
Thank you, Councillor McKechnie. Go ahead, Pam. That's an excellent question.
Sure. Through your worship to Councillor McKechnie. So the restriction on board and committee meetings was until April the 6th. And at that time, staff had been able to implement the necessary technology to have electronic council meetings. So the mayor did send out a letter to our boards and committees indicating that should they wish to still have board and committee meetings, we can facilitate that in the clerk's office. And that was part of the emergency bylaw that council also passed. I think it was back on March 16th. or the 27th. It was one of those meeting dates. So we've certainly been trying to work with the boards and committees if they want it to hold an electronic meeting. Not all boards and committees want to, or they may not even have items that they need to discuss at this time. But certainly there has been several boards and committees that have taken us up on the offer and have held electronic meetings that have been broadcasted live.
Okay, great. And yes, I apologize. I forgot about that, that we had approved that, the electronic board meetings and such. What about the dog tags? Do we need to do anything in that regard?
So that's a council discretion. They have been extended for another month, so I think that due date is coming up soon. I certainly haven't heard of any request for that further extension, but maybe members of council have. If you have, certainly I would ask you to entertain that, but as the clerk responsible for that department, I haven't heard of any further requests.
Okay, thanks very much.
All right, thank you. Is there any other questions on the approvals? No, seeing none. Okay, sorry, that was the business arising from the minutes, item 4. So item number 5 is council reports. We'll go to 5.1. Councillor Patterson has provided a report. I'll read the entire motion and then I'm going to go straight to mover and seconder. Councillor Patterson, here we go. Recommendation: be it resolved that Council of the Township Clearview hereby 1. Receive COU 002-2020 COVID-19 Community Assisted Program Report for information. And item 2, approve the establishment of the COVID-19 Community Assistance Program, including a creation of $10,000 initial fund plus a dollar-for-dollar public donation matching amount up to an additional $10,000 for municipal fund. And item 3, approve the reopening of the now closed township facilities, brackets of halls and storage space, on a formal request basis for use by local volunteer groups to provide COVID-19 related essential community assistance. Mover and seconder, I presume Patterson. Thank you. Seconder, McKechnie. Thank you very much. I will give the members benefit of allowing Councillor Patterson to speak to this, and then we'll open it up for debate. Councillor Patterson, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to try to get through this quickly. So I'm going to just go through some of the highlights of that covered by my report, just to give you a background. I think we are all experiencing the generosity of our communities. Many small groups looking after their neighbors, working with their church groups. So that's the root of this this report, of this request, that in some areas are a little more organized and resources a little bit more available. Some donations are a little bit more generous, and others typically are not. And I think it's only fair that when one group has, one area has started some good work, that we at least share what we've learned from that experience. And if there's any others, especially volunteer groups, that would benefit from just sharing the ideas, they would do so, we would do so, and try to identify, should council decide to participate, the areas where council should be most helpful. The township could be most helpful. So the group I'm talking about, obviously, it started in South Clearview, in the Mulmer and Clearview surrounding area. Residents started with phone calls, ended up in a first Zoom meeting where it was about 25 people. Some services had already started. Someone started a Facebook page called Caremongering. It was simply a page a service that maybe 30 or 40 people got together, wondered what they could do to look after people, whether it was food or social assistance. That blossomed into an effort to define, to really ask the question, how do we identify those people who need assistance, and how do we give it to them? So I'm just quickly to get a sense, after 2 weeks of organizing, the action's already started by this collective group of people. Is a food card with food lands. Participation has started, and we're collecting donations for more of that. There's a food box, which is really to generate some business, an outlet for our local farming community to move their produce through. And we're collecting donations for that. So there's the food side. There is a Facebook helpline I mentioned, the caremongering. They're an outreach, and we've extended that outreach to work with the 211 service. And all of these are in startup mode, but they are working and providing some assistance, whether it's food or social assistance. And there is a effort to communicate what some of these local groups are doing. So there's a mail out that's being worked up to help people navigate to and from to the group if you need help, to work with the group if you want to donate to the efforts, your time, your money, your anything that might be needed. And we're doing that in a number of ways. One is the mail out card I mentioned. And then there's a call your neighborhood, sort of a watch calling for shut-ins and seniors just to keep in touch. So those are the things that are underway now. I think every community in Clearview is suffering from these needs and is willing to, and the neighbors, the residents are willing to do something. So, so the task is there a role for the township to play? And I think we already know the answer to this, because in this very agenda, we've got a proposal from our Parks, Culture and Rec people with regards to a program that will provide some support for the business community. And I see that Drew Hale, our marketing communication person, also has activity to do similar to what's happening here, but in a broader Clearview-wide sense. So this motion really tries to put in one place, in one program, marshal the resources that the township has, the interest we have in caring for our community, put in some funds. It's not funding everything. For a lot of groups that maybe don't have the resources, just for simple things like supplies and a little bit of food, then as we did with the Stainer Stainer Food Bank, then we would start to let people know that we have a program available to assist the community, their neighbors, residents and businesses alike, while this COVID pandemic goes on. Some of the areas of cooperation have come out of that the township could consider is space for people to organize in terms of any food drops, food bank facilities. I would say again that and maybe this has been solved, but I would look to ask the Stainer Food Bank if they need additional facility, if the community is being generous and putting and bringing more food into the bank. I think the farmers market is expressed an interest in starting. All our farmers markets are now declared essential services. Of course, their tenant is us, the township, their landlord rather. So they would have to get permission from us. And I want to speak about this whole issue of using facilities in a moment. And I know there's been a letter to Amanda from the Creemore Farmers Market. They have an interest to start up something probably in the June and July timeframe. So it's a matter of getting our ducks in order if we were to do that. I mentioned the funds. The funds are really to just assist any groups with a modest amount of funding to get organized and to actually deliver the services that they are passing on. Local business support there's a number of things that I think we could do, including provincial federal program helpline. There's a lot of programs out there. Some people have gotten benefits already. I know some of the businesses in Creemore have gotten a $40,000 loan from feds. Some are still struggling to understand the programs. So is there a role for us to play there? I think there could be. And I have been working with the our two members of provincial and federal government, MPP, Jim Wilson and Terry Dowdle. Both of them have been very helpful in providing us some relief. They're aware of our local volunteers efforts, and they're providing me with up-to-date information on the federal and provincial programs. So, and I'm sure we have access to it on staff, so that's something we could do. The other thing is, yes, restaurants are closed to sit in, but they're offering, as many others are doing, offering curbside service for their non-essential businesses. And people may not be aware that our local restaurants in Clearview are offering those services. So again, I'll say that one of the things that Terry Vachon is talking about in his proposal, which I was pleased to see, is something around an open program, he calls it, which is not asking people to come back to our restaurants, but to let them know that where the take-up food is available. Just organize it, be a core of information, and promote the businesses and help them get through this as best we can as a municipality. And also, I think this is a little bit medium to longer term, but we're all worrying about the resilience of our business community. And so I think we need to start thinking about, while we're helping some businesses promote the fact that they're open in an alternate way, whether it's curbside or pickup, we have to start thinking about how we're going to help them on the way back to regular business. Hopefully all of our businesses will be back in regular business. So it's a quick snapshot. I will mention, just in case the math is not clear, the $10,000, I think we could do more, but the $10,000 is there with a match up to another 10 from us, which would mean we'd have a total of 30 if we had 10K from the public. We'd match it with another 10, so we'd have 30, and add the 10K that we donated to the food bank. That would be about $40,000 that we would be initially earmarking for aid to our businesses, to our residents, to meet the particular needs that they have. So with that, I'll leave it to comments and council, and I hope Dave will respond a bit to it. But I just do want to say that I am very pleased with some of the commonality that's developed between what the staff is suggesting today and what our community down here has identified, and I think others, I'm sure, throughout Clearview have done so as well.
All right, thank you, Councillor Patterson. First of all, I appreciate you mentioning that right at the end of your commentary in regards to the commonalities, because there is no doubt about it that our staff in all layers have been trying to, first of all, deal with this crisis on an immediate basis, but also very much aware of how the community will come out of this crisis and what it will look like and what it'll be shaped like. And so I have certainly seen it and heard it from members of council or members of our staff who have communicated with me over these last 6 weeks in regards to this, and that we're very concerned. Obviously our community has changed, and so there is going to be great struggles as we try to come back to what we know is beautiful Clearview Township. So Mr. Sage and the clerk, I believe, are available for a couple of clarifications. Before I go to questions, I do want to clarify, you did say something about farmers markets being essential. Mr. Sage, could you jump in and advise? I know that there was a commentary about the farmers markets being considered like a mall, and so malls are closed. So Mr. Sage, do you recall that conversation?
Yes, I do, Your Worship. Hold on a second. Yes, Your Worship. Yes, Your Worship, I do. I think Amanda might be able to provide some clarity around that, but I think Councillor Patterson is correct. They're, quite frankly, I guess we'll call them food service locales. I think there are some conditions around what can be provided at those locations. You may want to clarify that with Amanda.
Okay, thank you for that. Yeah, it's again, this is all part of how essential services get interpreted, from the province and what are and are not allowed to happen. So I remember reading where it said that the farmers markets were a mall, were treated like a shopping center, and because they had multiple things available at a farmers market, but specifically food service delivery is one of those things that is exempt or is part of the essential service part. So that's a little clarity there. Okay, Tom, you want to speak, but I'm sure other people have questions too. So you want to go ahead, Tom, and then Councillor Lamers, Councillor McKechnie, and who else? Everybody else. Okay, we're going to go with Patterson first, then Lamers. Go ahead.
Yeah, just quickly, just so that, because these are all good discussions, we'll try to get through as quickly as possible. But so farmers, you're right, there was some question, and the farmers market of Ontario received confirmation from the provincial government. I'm just reading from a letter that I received, that farmers market food sales only are considered essential service, and this would be under strict direction, for example, for the sanitary conditions under in our case, the Simcoe Muskoka District Health Unit. So, so that's the question is, that's why it's in my report, is they must get permission from their landlord to do so. We happen to be the landlord in space that we closed, and we can talk a bit about that later.
Fair enough. Okay, Lamers first, and anybody else, just so I get my list going. I saw McKechnie and Deneen and Broderick. Okay, so Lamers, McKechnie, Deneen, Broderick. Go ahead, Mr. Lamers.
Thank you, Your Worship. A couple of questions. How are you going to do social distancing in a farmer's market? Like, that's going to have to be really patrolled, and it's going to be hard to do. And the second, are you working with the Creedmoor or the Clearview Food Bank?
Tom?
Okay, so do you want to, are we going to do a Q&A on this thing? Just
Well,
so
yeah, as a matter of fact, it's awkward because, being a councillor's report, you have to answer the questions. And so I'm comfortable doing that if everybody else is comfortable doing that too. And then we'll refer to staff for any clarifications on this. Is that okay, Tom?
Yeah, I'm comfortable. I just don't want to take anyone else's time.
No
yes, thanks. Question. So it's not going to be the usual farmer's market. It will not be the usual produce. It'll be food. It'll be essential service only. It'll be food only. It will probably be an order, an advance order, and then you'll go to a prescribed place for curbside service, so pickup. So it's a matter of this is exactly the kind of thing where I think this assistance program can help. There's going to be some organization required to set up a website, a call-in line. The farmers will then tell you what they have available. You will order it. They'll put it in a box. They'll put it at a location on a given time and day, and you'll pick it up. It'll conform to the less than 5 day. And I'm going to speculate on some of the food bank programs as well, that we're talking about 1 or 2 people, no contact, no group contact, no milling around like the times we have in a farmer's market. Those aren't possible to do right now. So that's kind of format they're thinking about. And it's early days still. So in some sense, this is a matter of, we have some time to think about this, whether or not we want to open up a space, which is in contravention to the decision we made. Do they have alternate spaces? And if they do have alternate spaces, and we don't have to open up our halls, then how do we assist them in creating a farmer's market that works for the farmer mostly, and for those that want fresh produce? Now, in terms of working with the Container Food Bank, yes, we are.
All right, Councillor Lamers, that's good. Stand by. We'll go to McKechnie. I have McKechnie, Deneen, Broderick, Walker, and Burton. Are you coming in? Okay, eventually. Go ahead,
I'll
Doug
wait to see
McKechnie.
what everybody else has to say and what the answers are.
Thank you. Mr. McKechnie.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Your Worship. And Tom, I can fully support this. Matter of fact, you had mentioned about it's just 10,000, maybe up to 30,000. Basically, yes, I agree. I think we can do better than that, but I think that's a good start. So I would support that. You had also mentioned that you're recommending a committee, an ad hoc committee of 3 to 5 people, and which I think is great. And normally I don't like closed meetings because I feel that we have to be totally transparent. However, when it comes to township finances, especially, we have to be transparent. However, I was just wondering if you would entertain a friendly amendment that due to the confidential nature of requests and donations, that all committee meetings, or your ad hoc committee, that all committee meetings be closed to the public. Would you consider that a friendly amendment at all? That those committee meetings are.
Tom, you can answer that, and perhaps we can draw upon the clerk for any advice. Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, so we have some experience already. So we do have open meetings where you can have an open meeting when you're just describing the total scope of what you want to do. You want to build the framework. What do we need? So those things, I would think there's no reason to go closed because it's really trying to invite public ideas anyways. So of course you want to keep the committee to a decent size, but they're not closed per se. However, it's not also, we're not actually building, and many times you're going to find we're not actually building the service. And for example, things where we want to keep it needy, the families that in our area that may need food on the table. We go to people who know where they are. They don't have to tell us the names. We arrange for the food, and then the food is delivered. We've done that with the church. We've done that with the school, 2 churches, the school, and so as we get into it, I can't get all the details today on this, but as we get into it, and that would be the work of the committee, they'd have to decide, well, are we actually deciding who gets the food and what their name is, or are we working with the church group and making resources available? Okay, so that's partly what the money's for. Let them do the work. They just need a few bucks. Let's give them a few bucks. So it's kind of like what we do with the community assistance program. We don't get into their business per se, but we see there's merit and we give them some assistance.
Thank you for that answer. Anything further, McKechnie?
Yeah, okay, no, then I won't propose that friendly amendment. I'm happy with that explanation. My only concern was that someone, we may end up inadvertently embarrassing someone if they find that they need food or assistance, and we may end up inadvertently embarrassing them in public. So that was the reason for my concern, but I'm happy with Tom's explanation.
I appreciate that. Confidentiality is everything when it comes to this type of work. Perhaps the clerk could help clarify a little bit about what is written in this report in regards to how an ad hoc committee might function.
Yes, so actually, if council would like to start a ad hoc committee, that should really be added to the resolution, just so staff have that direction. The other thing, talking about the closed session, there's very specific reasons why we can go into closed sessions. So certainly if we're going to be talking about anybody personally and their situation regarding COVID-19 and the circumstances that they're dealing with, certainly I would recommend going into closed session. But as Councillor Patterson alluded to, there's a lot of work that can be done in open session as well too. And I think that was the general consensus from his comments and the withdrawal of the friendly amendment.
Thank you very much for that clarification. Now on my list, I have Deneen. Councillor Deneen, I hope your video and audio stay with us. So we'll all be patient and listen to you. Go ahead.
Hi there. So through your worship to Mr. Sage, the Emergency Management and Civil Protection Act, that's why we have our recreational facilities closed, is it not? Am I wrong in thinking that?
So short answer, Councilmember Deneen, is you are 100% correct.
Now, next thing. If we were, they're closed, they're mandated closed till May the 12th. No ifs, ands, or buts. You're talking about reopening things for storage, for whatever. And again, correct me if I'm wrong, we are a corporation. This would be like the corporation getting in a car, going up to Singhampton on a blustery day, seeing that the lights on, the emergency lights on 124 are flashing, drive through those lights and no longer have insurance. And if someone's injured, the liability would be huge. And a fine on top of that. Corporations are liable up to $10 million. Like, I'm all for, don't get me wrong, I'm all for churches, places that can be open, the Legion, something like that being opened. But correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Sage, is that, am I not reading this right?
So your analogy, Councillor Deneen, is palatable.
It's out there. It's out there. I know it's out there. I realize that, but I'm trying to.
So
I can't understand an opening of one of our facilities that we've been mandated to close by law till May 12th. After May 12th, if it's good to go, that's fine. I'm just asking this questions. And
Yeah.
I'd like to know who's going to administer those funds as well for this, if Councillor Patterson, or if they're expecting your staff to help with that. I'm just not clear on the administration of the funds.
Okay, can
Thanks,
I jump
guys.
in, Councillor Deneen? Mr. Sage and Madam Clerk, could you just clarify with us again? Bill 187 was the original motion that created the closures and direction and so on. And so that's the bill that has been since extended as a result of an emergency being declared by the province. So that's where we are right now, correct? Nodding of heads is good enough. Like is there anything? Yes, go ahead, Pam.
All right, thank you, Your Worship. So I actually had this question too, and the question I had for our solicitor was, can the recreation center be turned into another venue, and that's a way that we could open it? And the answer was no. So in his opinion, we cannot open up community centers, period, until the province tells us that we can do so. If somebody has some other information, I'd be happy to review it and send it to our solicitor. But with the information that I've been provided and the opinion of our solicitor, the answer is no.
All right, so I understand that. Mr. Sage, go ahead. And then I see Patterson would like to speak. Go ahead, Sage.
Yeah, so the legislation is as it is, but keeping in mind the date is May 12th, which is only 20 some days away, 20 to be exact, I think. And with respect to how do we manage the funds, in Mr. Councillor Patterson's report, it appears that he is looking for giving receipts. And in that situation, yes, the municipal staff would have to be involved with the process.
Okay, thank you very much. Ms. Deneen, go ahead, follow up.
Do you feel right now that you have enough staff to administer something like that during, I'm sorry, it's to Steve again, through Mayor Measures. Do you feel that you have, due to our not problems, but our emergency situation with the township, do you feel you have enough staff to administer something like that?
So due to the situation we are in, there are many things that staff have needed to set on the back burner. Any item, we're going to talk about them next, I think, any item that takes a lot of staff to sit down and build some consensus amongst the group. What that has done, though, has created some time to do, as you might have heard in some of the redeployments, we've been catching up on things like reams of accounts payable scanning that just never got done. So there is some capacity. It's $10,000. If we got 10 $1,000 donations, probably not, but that's not going to be the case. So no, I think we do have the capacity.
Thank you.
All right, well, thank you for that. Councillor Patterson, would like to respond a little bit. Next on the list, though, will be Broderick, then Walker, then Mr. Burton. Go ahead, Mr. Patterson.
I guess it's the question of this reopening. I don't want to get into the weeds. I'm going to preface my comments, first of all, by saying, when you start meeting 2 weeks ago, when we were looking for how to get things done, we looked at the tools to do that. And one of the tools was space. And one of the spaces that was central was the township. Because we are moving not at a glacial speed, Mayor, or as we all are different now, but we're moving a lot quicker. You always have to have alternates. And we have alternate locations that we've found in our particular case. But we're asking the church, which they're willing to do, people in the churches, to do the same thing. We would ask 1 or 2 people, whether it be volunteers, probably volunteers with permission from the township, to use township space. But I can wait. Right now, we don't have an immediate need in our particular area. Whether there's need in other parts of Clearview, should this program exist, would be something we would need to explore. And I would think we keep the option open. I know in my hometown, and I'll go back to the comment that right at the very beginning that the CAO said, that different municipalities make different judgment calls, because under the EMPCA, they did not say close the facility. They said no congregation greater than 5, and the best way to do that is not to have a hall where 50 people can come in and have a birthday party. So in Windsor, they've opened up the whole arena and they turned it into a food bank in cooperation with the community and businesses. Is that in violation? Did they get a legal opinion? We're getting into the weeds. For now, for today, for the acceptance of this proposal, the space isn't a showstopper for what we want to do with our volunteers. I'm talking Clearview-wide, not Creemore. In my own experience here, we are working with the local church, 2 of them actually, Clayton Cullum's Creemore Community Church and St. Luke's. And we're using the space that they have for drop-offs for the food bank, for example, and food. But I would like us to consider, if we would organize this, in terms of whether there would be a need to arise and whether or not we'd have to have another look at it. So I'll say it that way. It's not urgent, but it would be something that someone's going to ask us for.
Fair enough. One clarification, Tom, just I know it's a slip up in words, but the organization that Clayton Cullum works for is the Clearview Community Church. So they're doing a great job across all of Clearview Township. Over to Mr. Broderick. Mr. Broderick, John Broderick, would you like to pose a question or have a comment? Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. First off, I'd like to commend Councillor Patterson on his initiative. I like the concept. Councillors Lamers and Deneen asked my first 2 questions, but regarding the first one, the physical distancing issue, I still have some concerns with the sharing of space. From what what limited information I've gathered, the droplets this virus can live in droplets on certain surfaces for several days. So the sharing of space, I'm very concerned about those issues. The funds, the $10,000 you're talking about as well, I don't recall reading in your report where you were recommending that come from? And the last thing is simply just a comment in the report. You referred to the Steiner Chamber of Commerce, which is now the Clearview Chamber of Commerce. That's it for me. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. I don't think there's any specific question in there, so we'll move to Councillor Walker. Councillor Walker, would you have a question or comment to the motion on the floor?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. First of all, Councillor Patterson, thank you for, you talked about the local churches providing assistance and using their facilities. And to me, that was one of the questions I had. If we had local churches involved, then there's facilities there that we could certainly use for storage facilities and drop-off points, which you have alluded to that's already taking place. So to me, that's an avenue of buildings to be used instead of trying to skirt around the legalities of our small halls. And once we open one for something, then we've got issues maybe with one or two more wanting to be open for something else. With regards to your motion, most of this is revolving, will affect individuals and or businesses are the can be or will be the recipients of, are we looking at food or monetary? That's number one. And number two is the amount of, if it's monetary, is there a maximum amount that can be requested through an application form? Those are a couple of questions to start with, and then I'll wait. I have a couple more afterwards.
All right, thank you very much, Councillor Walker. Go ahead, Councillor Patterson. You got a couple of questions there. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Robert. Yes, we did find that the churches were quite willing to volunteer, and I think there's a network we grow, and that's a perfect example of we're not doing all the work, we're enabling it. We're telling other people that this group over here is working and giving it to you. So they're a network, they do have some space, and you're right. There's no proposals that we've seen that we're donating directly any money. What the money is being used for is the donations coming in is to purchase the food, for example, for a food bank. So, you know, people would have to, if you're just a volunteer group organizing your own effort in your community or your neighborhood, you'd raise the funds yourself. And we'd expect volunteers to continue to do that under this program, but we might provide some additional support for them, just to start on. So we're not paying for the whole thing. We're just giving a stimulus, whatever specific need there might be. And a lot of it is in organization of it, getting the paper out and getting the boxes and paying for the gas or whatever, you know, to do this thing. So so that's that. I think that's what you were asking for. Does that answer all your questions, Robert?
Go ahead, Robert. Thank you.
Yeah, that's okay. I also might suggest that if you are looking at using the money to buy food, that you also could look at cards for Foodland or whatever to give the family a certain amount, so that then they can go and purchase what might be necessary, like diapers or whatever, to help offset some of their infants and formula. So I think that's an avenue to certainly look at for the food voucher cards to assist. And that was that question, Councillor Patterson. The other thing I have, we are receiving the money and issuing receipts, tax receipts. How close to the edge of the Municipal Act are we, as far as legalities is concerned? That's a question I have, that's all.
So Councillor Patterson, I'll let you answer part of that question, and then perhaps I'll go to the clerk on the donation question. Go ahead, Mr. Patterson.
Hey, Robert, I like the way you think. You're getting into this already. Yeah, yes, on the food card, we partnered up with, when we started talking about doing this, we found out things we didn't know about in our small community. We know that Sim at Foodland, for example, give him a plug, he wanted to give out food cards. He wanted to give out $40, $25 food cards, $1,000. We said, some of the money that was donated, not township money, but some donated by residents, said, well, we'll go in with you on that. And so there right now is a food card coming out of the food land. Okay, it's going to be put, and that allows, just as you said, that allows the recipient to buy what they need with that card. And if somebody wants to top that off, add more to the value of the card, or come out with a $50 card, that's the process that we're trying to organize. And that is happening here down here in South Clearview. With regards to receipts, and I've checked this, and this is no different than any other donation. It would be treated no different than a donation for the library or anything else that would be provided by the township. So if they wanted to put money into this fund, expect that the receipt would be, the money would be receipted as a donation. And I've talked to CIO Stage about this, and I think he's talked to Kelly.
So then I'll go to the clerk and or Sage and or Kelly for that matter. Madam Clerk, your comments on the process of donations to the Corporation of the Township of Clearview.
So I was just going to indicate that I'm going to defer that comment to our treasurer, Kelly McDonald.
Sure, okay, let's do that. Hello, Kelly, I see your name there, but I don't see or hear you. How are you?
I'm
There
doing
you are.
very well. I'm
Hello,
here,
Kelly.
Your Worship. I believe Councillor Patterson is correct. Any donations that are made to the township, we can do tax receipts for. And quite a few of ours have got specific uses that they want it made for. So I don't have a problem setting that up. I believe Steve is waving at you.
Yeah, I see Steve there. So thank you, Kelly, for that. Nice to see you again. Go ahead, Mr. Sage.
Kelly, if I could ask when you're on the line or we can see you, do we have a minimum amount? I mean, I realize I'm getting into the weeds, but I think we have a minimum amount we should share with council.
We do. For the most part, the minimum amount is $25, I believe, in order to get a tax receipt.
Okay. Thank you.
I would strongly suggest cash donations versus donations in kind. It's a whole lot of nightmare when you get into situations where it's donated time or donated services. Cash donations are the easiest. They're straightforward, and we do them all the time.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Kelly, and thank you for all the work you guys are doing. Mr. Burton, Deputy Mayor Burton, you're in there. Oh, before you go ahead, any other councillors for any brief questions to follow up? Mr. Lamers, did I see McKechnie? Okay, so Mr. Burton, and then we'll have brief comments. Then I have a few comments, and we're going to call the motion. Go ahead, Barry.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I'm a little confused. Excuse me, I'm a little confused. It doesn't take much to do these days, but I certainly applaud the efforts that the community has come together trying to help other members of the community, and I totally understand that. I'm not so understanding why us as a council or as a township need to get involved in how the money's being spent. I see this group that is doing these great efforts as being an independent organization. We can make a donation to them just like we do to any community grant, as Councillor Patterson has indicated. So, you know, they run the things, they decide how they're going to spend the money, and we're simply making a donation to them. Just like we don't ask the Kinsmen how they're going to spend the money. We don't ask the food bank how they're going to spend their money. We make the donations. They have the expertise how to run it. You know, and I think, you know, within this organization, the churches that are well versed and know who are the families in need, and that's so. I mean, I certainly support the idea of wanting to donate to help them do that, but and I certainly would not support opening up one of our facilities. Legal reasons, I think other reasons being that you know, the cleaning, whether it's one or two people into that facility, it's you know, then it has to be cleaned on a regular basis. What protocol do we set up for the cleaning, which we'd have to, you know, probably get approved through the health organization the health unit because we're going against what the emergency plan is. And I know that the county, I know that Meaford Township, they're all setting up for emergency isolation centers, which any one of our facilities could end up becoming. So for that reason, I don't support opening up. I think, the great idea where volunteers can deliver, food, clothes, whatever it is they need. All in favor of that, but I think us getting involved is only going to encumber that organization, because all of a sudden we got rules and we got meeting rules, and so I'm not sure if Councillor Patterson is seeing this committee as being a committee of council, or it's just a committee of like people who are interested in doing something. So I guess that's the first question, because we got talking about, well, who's going to sit on the committee and who's going to decide how it's going to be spent. Do we as a committee or members of council really want to do that? I think we best let the people who are doing it and doing an excellent job of it, let them do it, and let's not tie their hands up at it.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Burton. Mr. Patterson, you have a few responses to a couple of those questions. Go right ahead.
Yeah, I agree completely with the last statement Barry made, is that these groups that have started, and we've reached out to people that can do this, like the churches, they're doing an excellent job. So this, and so we wouldn't interfere with them. On the committee, we do like to organize ourselves, and I do agree that if we were to take over this whole thing, we would slow it down, because we're very deliberate and aware of our liabilities and the broader. So there's no issue there. So we're not organizing the whole thing. We are trying to stimulate others to do this, and to recognize that other groups that are out there that are trying to do it, let them know that we can provide them with a little help to do it. In terms of the point that Barry was making, and another, I agree with it, we shouldn't be telling the various caring groups out there how they want to do good works. If they're doing them, let them do them. If they need some assistance, though, the question today is, can we provide some for them, because they'd like to help, but they're limited, and maybe we can help them with it. So we're kind of in between here. We have a community that has a need. We're the great unifier. We're the people that can give a framework to get things done in our community. Volunteers move faster. Just give them a job and they'll do it. How can we assist them? So we're not really dictating how they spend the money. I don't want any illusion here in terms of other groups that have started up. And the only one I know that's organized is around here. There may be others, and I was hoping to find out today if there were in Clearview. Is you're not going to hear, my guess is you're not going to hear anyone in our area asking for money. In fact, what's probably going to happen is we're going to get donations to put into this fund. All right. So that's the way it can work. Some areas are going to be self-sufficient, and other areas are going to need funds. And that's the whole idea of bringing this to council, because we really want to bring it to Clearview and to all our residents. So and the reason why we need an ad hoc committee is we talked about a lot of things here. We didn't get to some specifics. We haven't got to the details of some others. And we really need to sit down, as volunteer groups are doing all over Clearview and the region right now, and hash some of these things out. Okay. And all I want to do is, with this community assistance program, is make the township visible as a resource for them to use if they need some help. And we know that our residents need some help.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. Deputy Mayor, for a follow-up, again, just asking, I have Lamers, McKechnie, anybody else for last minute commentary? Okay, go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Oh, back to my question. Thank you, Your Worship, through to Councillor Patterson. So I'm still not sure. I mean, I have no problem putting forth a motion to, give some money to these volunteers to do what they're doing. But you talk about this ad hoc committee again. I mean, you have sat on many committees. I've sat on committees that aren't, quote, committees of council. They're just committees of people getting involved and stuff like that. So when you talk about this ad hoc committee, are you talking about a committee of council or just an ad hoc committee of this community people where maybe somebody from council would sit on it and as an advisory position?
Thank you.
This is what you said at the end. A couple interested council that show our face, that we're out. This is what we do as councilors. We're out in the public. And so I know Councilor McKechnie and myself are involved with the BIA, which we're a key partner in developing what we have going down here. And every one of you is involved in non-council work, but community work. And that's what I'm talking about. And then of course we would contact key community leaders, and we can name them all in each of our areas within Clearview, and we'd work with them. So, it's not prescriptive. I'm not talking 3 to 5 people. I'm not saying there should be one for every ward. I think this is something we need to think through, and hopefully, like we're doing right now, spend more time outside this meeting and think it through. And that's what the committee would do. A group of people that would work together, assigned by the township, if you like, or by the township, to report back how we doing, that's what. So that's what I'm thinking.
Okay, Tom, I'm giving you an awful lot of leeway to speak here. Other people want to speak, so let's be careful here. Deputy Mayor, just for a small one, and then I have Lamers and McKechnie.
Yes, thank you again. Thank you again, Your Worship. So back to my comments, and thank you for your responses, Councillor Patterson. So would it not seem simpler just to pass a simple motion that says we're going to donate $10,000 to this group, and we will provide assistance as they need it? Keep it simple. I mean, I think we need to take out the bit about opening up a township facility. I would say that would have to come out of the motion. And let's just make the donation. If they want more money down the road, then we can always look at giving more money down the road, especially depending on how long this emergency situation is going to last for. Just like we did with the food bank. They needed money. We stepped up the plate. We made the donation, which I'll quite say, from what I've seen of other townships, we made one of the biggest donations to the food bank than what some of the other townships have done. So I was quite pleased that we had done that. So can we just simplify this motion that we're going to, make a $10,000 donation and provide support, technical support as needed?
Deputy Mayor, if you don't mind, I would like to see us complete this motion, and that sounds like something that could be separate. So let's just see how we're going here. I don't think this is an amendment sort of situation right now, because we have a pretty thorough report and thorough 3-part motion presented by Councillor Patterson. Councillor Lamers, Councillor McKechnie. Go ahead, Lamers.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, I applaud everybody for trying to do this, but the churches and the food banks are doing a great job. We should be staying out of it. The 10,000 is he's got from reserves, but he doesn't know where they're coming from.
Fair enough. I appreciate that. Councillor Patterson, a brief answer, please.
Yeah, the advice from the usual place, Kelly, and we know where the pots of money are. There's hundreds of thousands of dollars. So I would simply left it blank, because I always like to hear staff saying we're the best place to take it from.
All right, we always take advice from staff when it comes to finding funding, so we'll certainly go to that. Councillor, is that okay, Councillor Lamers? Thank you. You're good. Thank you. All right, yeah. Councillor McKechnie.
Well, I don't want to muddy the waters any further, so I'll just try and keep it as simple as possible. So 2 comments were made, and which really do not bother me. 2 concerns that they don't bother me. Those being the opening of the facilities and physical distancing. So we can approve the opening of the facilities, but those facilities will not be open until the province says that they'll be open, and also the Simcoe District Muskoka Health Unit say they'll be open. So I don't have a problem with approving them to be open, because we're going to be waiting until we get the okay from higher up to open them anyway. Secondly, the physical distancing, you know, what Tom is asking for is a committee here, and it's up to the committee to ensure that all those things are done, the physical distancing and such, that they're all enforced. So I don't think that we can micromanage the committee. That's all that Tom is asking for, is a committee. I don't think we should micromanage it. I think I'm happy with the motion that he has right now, and I would like to see it proceed. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Councilor McKechnie. Mr. Sage has popped in on the screen. Have you got something to say, Mr. Sage? And then I see Patterson once again.
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, your worship. So I only have one question on the motions, and that is, so the municipality receives the donations, we create the receipts if this motion survives. My challenge will be is back to Pam's comments and so maybe the deputy mayor's comments about the relationship of this committee to the municipality. Who gives me and our staff the direction to write the checks and how much and to who? And does council need to approve that? Once you answer those questions, I think this decision would flow pretty quick.
And they are tough decisions. Councilor Patterson, go ahead.
Yeah, so that is the purpose. That occurred to me that now we're in a municipality and we just don't do it on a Zoom call. We have to have some formality here and some assurance to our taxpayer that the money went wisely. So obviously there would be a literature that goes out saying this committee has been formed, has the resources. If you need some funds, contact your township, name the person, and one of us on the committee, I think there should be council present, and someone from possibly staff, but not necessarily. I take Steve's comment on that and the clerks, and then someone, a leader in the community. Be nice to see one other than in the Creemore area, because we're fairly well organized. Be the ones that look at some of these things, make some phone calls very quick. You know, you have to call a special meeting and then report back to staff, and then eventually, as time rolls on, we do report back to council from time to time how the program's going. So it's the relationship is one of having a recognizable council person, township representative, if that's okay with staff, linking back to staff to make the final call on the receipt, for example. But more than doing the receipt, there's a lot more work to do than other than the receipt.
Thank you very much, Councilor Patterson. Mr. Sage, go ahead.
So that would work fine. I mean, the value of the amounts of these checks, I'm going to make some assumptions, which is kind of dangerous. But they're probably, you know, if there's $30,000 and there's 10 different groups, that's 3,000 each, or 8 different groups, whatever the numbers are. The value of those expenditures are within the procurement side of our bylaw. So a senior staff person can facilitate that. But I just want council to make sure that that is something we need to consider.
All right, thank you very much. All right, Mr. Patterson, once again.
This is just housekeeping. So the clerk made a suggestion, if we're going to have an ad hoc committee, that we add the ad hoc committee to the motion. It's up to the clerk's decision there, as far as I'm concerned. I think it's understood it's in the body, but I understand the clerk. I've been guilty of not putting in everything I want in the motion. So I appreciate the clerk's due diligence.
No kidding. Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Your Worship. So I guess there's still a question for me as the clerk. Is this a community group, or is this meant to be a committee of council? Because as the deputy mayor alluded to, when it's a committee of council, there's a whole lot of rules and regulations that go around that. And certainly as staff, we're more than prepared to facilitate that. But that will change, you know, the context and how meetings take place and things of that nature. So so if it's a committee, if it's a community group that is just making recommendations to council, that's a completely different ballgame, and that would not need to be included in the recommendation, other than if council wants them to report back on how they're going to divide out the funds and seek council approval at that time.
All right, I appreciate that. Madam Clerk, just stay right there for a second. Councillor Patterson, a couple of things I'd like to jump in here. I've been very patient letting everybody else speak, and I've been listening to your responses and appreciating all of your input. I wanted to start out by saying, you know, when you want to try to do a really good thing, good way to mess it up is get government involved. That's the way I look at it. I think that you've got a really good thing going. You got a really good proposal. I think you've got an amazing community input that has stepped forward at a time of need when the community's in great, you know, it's in some serious concern. And it's very multi-dynamic in respect to, there's both the charity side of things in regards to those individuals or families who are in desperate need and need the services like a food bank or counseling that could be available through some of our pastoral service individuals. You know, Clayton Cullum, great guy. And so to me, it's multifaceted. But then the other side is in your businesses. You've got mention of the BIA in here, and there's been talk of what businesses can do. And I appreciate that you've been communicating with the MP, the MPP's offices, both the provincial and federal programs. It appears to have changed daily. I mean, just today, the Prime Minister talked about students, and so there's a lot of things, a lot of moving parts here. And so, although it's a great program and a great idea, I come back to what I was just saying, or trying to. I mean, I say it in jest, you know, about letting government mess up a good plan. It is a good plan, but I don't think at this time during a crisis that we need to sort of recreate some type of new charity committee of council that deals with confidentiality of individual residents and their specific needs, as well as dealing with the rules and regulations that a municipality like ours has to follow. That's why we have our clerk and our clerk's offices and our clerk services that are available to us through all the staff members that are there. And as most certainly all members of council, as you've been, you know, learning and training, we have to follow procedure. And so there's a whole lot of items in this that to me are just a little out of line with what we really need to do. And so a comment was made earlier about why do it again, or why are we doing this when we have services that are already there. Across our community, we have many church organizations that have great benevolence funds built into them. Across our community, we have the Clearview Stainer Food Bank, which does have a sort of I guess it's like a constitution or a directive on how they operate. And they have a sworn confidentiality and when it comes to their client base. And so there's already systems in place that are servicing residents across our community. And in fact, in the recent communication with the leadership at the food bank here in Clearview, they indicated that they would serve anybody. I mean, anybody who comes to the door and needs some assistance, they're going to get it. I think you'll probably find that from our church community as well, who are part of this. Certainly, I had a conversation with Clayton Cullum, and he indicated to me that he's always able to step forward and help somebody through the funding that is available to him through their church. So I'm sure other churches are the same. I'm not trying to highlight him a couple times here, although he deserves some highlight, some credit for what he's doing in our community. So that's where I'm going on this. My big concern, Tom, is that with the services that we can provide, this is one of them that's really outside of our ability at this time. We have abilities in our community. We have service groups and organizations who can do this type of work. And I think it's just outside of what we should be doing right now. I'm sorry, that's the way I feel about it. Although I absolutely commend the work of volunteers who step forward, who want to participate, and recognizing that need. It's certainly something that we all have to recognize. So the reason I asked our clerk to stay on here is because I wanted her to understand that we don't want to break any rules here, Madam Clerk. And you know, if we start breaking rules, you're the one that has to remind us, because you are effectively the highest crown in this corporation. And so we have to make sure we do this right. and do it correctly. And so there's a lot of pushing the envelopes, a lot of looking for ways to get through this that we're trying to put forward here. And I find this motion has a whole lot of question marks for me, and so I'm not prepared to continue to support it as it stands. But I will state that the deputy mayor already made a great comment, and that was that this community can step forward and help in financial ways to help organizations who already have a system in place, who are working and trying to provide service. And if they have a relationship with us at the township, they can provide us the confidence that they have proper financial planning and proper financial reporting and accountabilities, then I have no problem, hearing a motion to do that type of support. So that's where I sit on this motion, Councillor Patterson. I appreciate you want to speak, and I would welcome your comments there too. So please jump in.
Okay. I'm gonna keep it simple. If none of this was on the table now, and we were just doing a wards report and saying basically, how's it going in all our wards? We'd all say, and we'd probably come to a conclusion, probably could do something for the community. And the easiest thing we can do, and the deputy mayor said it, is we can have some money available. So we're out of it. We're not doing anything specifically by our staff or by our council. Of course, every council and every ward that's got an active volunteer group is probably involved in it. Okay, so let me pose the question: is this council? Forget my motion for a second. Is there any reason why we wouldn't set aside some money for anyone that asked us for assistance? And if the answer was yes, then what would we have to do to let the community know that it's available? So part of what the spirit of this whole thing is, instead of waiting for someone to ask, like the food bank, the Clearview Standard Food Bank did, that we do a little bit of outreach. And we say, look, we've got some funds available. If you need a little bit to help your neighbor, we're here. Is that?
I tend to agree with you, Tom. And I want to, just by looking at the screen here right now and seeing all of you there, Councillor McKechnie, just looking at you just reminded me of something that you brought forward at our budget discussion. And Councillor McKechnie and council supported it as a whole. Councillor Deneen, you weren't there for this particular motion, but you might recall what happened. Councillor McKechnie brought forward a motion to increase our community grants program value, because our value was quite low, and that was brought forward and that was supported. And then that gave Councillor Leishman, who's not with us right this second, and Deputy Mayor Burton the opportunity to review all of the grant programs, and we're able to fulfill a lot of requests across our whole community. But what it also did was leave us with a substantial amount of funds in our community assistant grant fund, and that we exercised that right just at our last meeting when we accessed that funds for a group that asked for it. So to Councillor Patterson, I would suggest to you that it's a wonderful report. It's got some good content to it, and the community overall across Clearview is stepping up in many, many ways. And so this is a time for us to be a little simplified and perhaps go back to what the deputy mayor was saying. If we have a committee or a group that would like to see some type of funding, we have availability for it. I see a couple of hands already. So I saw Deneen and then I saw Burton. I'll give Councillor Patterson an opportunity to respond to my comment if he has, and then I'll go straight to Deneen. Go ahead. I think you muted yourself there, Tom. Tom, I think, yeah, you just muted yourself. So go ahead.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I'm not exactly clear what you're saying. So I was trying to keep it simple. However, whatever means we would take, would we see the need to have some available funds to our volunteer groups if they came and asked us? Whether it was a service club, which I doubt, it's not really intended for the service club, they have their own needs, it's for the local groups, but whoever. And if it was, then we would have to somehow put some structure around it, either include it in the community assistance grant and say that because of COVID, we're now also offering assistance to volunteer groups, but you still have a committee there. you still have people that receive it. So
Yes.
I'm not sure.
All right, so my commentary was in regards to our community assistance grant. Deputy Mayor Burton, you sit on that 3-person committee. I always forget to remember to include Brenda in there. She's a big part of that committee. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor first.
Thank you, thank you, Your Worship. So to Councillor Patterson, through Your Worship. So absolutely, do we need to make money available to our community, volunteers? Absolutely. But I think that's what we're trying to do. I think that's what you're trying to accomplish. All we're trying to do is, so this group, and I was part of, you and I were both part of that initial meeting they had. Have they given themselves, I don't like to use the word title, but if they given themselves a name, a title, a thing? Because, like I said, I'm prepared to put forth a motion. Let's give them $10,000 and let them deal with it because they know where it needs to go. And we can put out promotional information saying, that council is now given $10,000 to this community group. And if you're in need, these are the people to contact. I think it's quite simple.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Tom, and then Councillor Deneen. We have to wrap this up because we got lots of things on the agenda here. Go ahead, Councillor Patterson.
Yeah, I appreciate the free flowing because it's a good cause. So to be clear, our group doesn't, I can't even speak for the group. It's not my group. I happen to be a participant in it. Okay. But the group that it's here that we're using as an example is self-sufficient. It would be embarrassing to take the money when the reason is really that others in Clearview may need the money. Okay. So the point being is to spread the love, to take that already exists in the other parts of Clearview. All right. So giving the money to us would in Creemore would be, well, we'd probably look for somebody in New Lowell, and the volunteers here locally are really busy doing what they do in our neighborhoods. So they don't want to work in New Lowell. They'd love to, but they're busy doing this. So the point is, Township creates a township fund for other groups in the community that would appreciate knowing that the township is there to help you, and then promote it. That's why that's got a program. So promote it, saying, look, we've got some funds if you need it. And how would we administer that? Would it go through the CIO? Would it go through the clerk? Would it go to the mayor? However that would happen, you'd no doubt have to organize a little bit of that. And that's essentially what I do, what I've done in my report. I've just simply said, if we're going to make the funds available for other groups, then we'd have to put a little bit of framework around it. Doesn't take too long. A couple of Zoom meetings.
Yeah, I got it, Tom. Okay, so I know Councillor Deneen is being very, very patient, and the Deputy Mayor has been waving quite a bit. So Councillor Deneen, you want to jump in here, and then we'll go with the Deputy Mayor right after you. Go ahead, Deneen.
If the Deputy Mayor would like to go ahead, that's fine. I'll wait.
Okay, Councillor. Thank you, Councillor. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Deneen. And so, Tom, it sounds like what you want to set up is a reserve. It sounds like you want to set up a reserve, call it the COVID-19 reserve, community assistant grant, and then anybody can come to us. We can, we're back to making it part of council, where we could do it the same way as we do with the with the grants that we do now. So is your thought that we set up this as a reserve? We throw $10,000 into the reserve, whatever it is, but say to start, we throw $10,000 into the reserve. So and any of the groups out there that need assistance can come and ask for it. And
I just want to jump in. Sorry, we want to be careful, Deputy Mayor. We are still on a motion that's on the floor. So you're talking about a motion that hasn't even been made yet, and I would honestly not entertain any amendments as we move forward right now. Is that okay?
I appreciate what you're saying. I'm just trying to get a clarification from Councillor Patterson. Is that what he's looking for?
All right.
Is he looking to set up a reserve? Because that's the impression I'm getting about what he's describing.
All right. As an aside, go ahead, Councillor Patterson.
Sure. Now we're into the accounting weeds. So we're going to take some money whenever however we earmark it, we're going to take it and it's going to be reserved for use by the community for COVID relief. All right. So we do that all the time. That's why I didn't name the reserve. Okay. And I don't necessarily think we have to, although that's something that Kelly and Steve can do. It's a small amount of money, a lot of effort here. So yes, and generally the idea is make it available to the community by application, okay, to help them help others during the COVID crisis. All right.
All right.
And
thank you.
Sounds like a reserve to me.
And this is for another motion. Councillor Janine, please go ahead.
Probably totally irrelevant, and I'm sorry, but the federal government yesterday put in place $350 million to support community organizations and nonprofit organizations. And some of that is supposed to go to small independent organizations and the rest to the United Way and the Red Cross. Now, that part of it, I know we wouldn't be able to. I just wanted to make note of that. Like anybody that applied for relief got it within 3 days. And it's just another avenue to look at for Councillor Patterson with his group. And I'm just going to leave it at that. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I see your hand once again, Councillor Patterson. I think we need to get to moving on here. Go ahead, Councillor Patterson. You're okay?
I'm okay. I was just saying thanks to
okay,
Councillor Denise.
Thank you. Now, we've certainly gone around. To the Madam Clerk, is there anything that we need to do other than I will read the motion again, or I'll just call the motion? I think we've certainly gone around on this. Madam Clerk, your comments?
No, I would just call the motion. Now, there is something in our procedure bylaw. If a member of council so chooses, they can ask for each individual request in the recommendation to be voted on separately. I'm not sure if that's something council wants to entertain at this time, but I just wanted to make you aware that that is a possibility.
Thank you very much. I'll just ask, is there anybody looking for that? Or we're going to vote on the motion as a whole? I don't see any hands, so there you go. All right, Madam Clerk or Deputy Mayor, you were going to say something?
Yes, I was going to ask Councillor Patterson to withdraw his motion, and then him and I can put forth a motion together to create the reserve that he talked about, and just keep it simple and withdraw, because I can't support your motion the way it is right now, Councillor, because it has the issues of the opening the facilities and stuff like that, which is, to me, we don't want to go down that road, but certainly the reserve to help our community groups, absolutely.
Mr. Patterson.
I say I've been demoted to Mr. now.
When I start calling you Tom, we're in trouble.
So I will take as a friendly amendment at this time, removal of the reopening of the facilities, because I know that's a gray area, and I appreciate the staff's opinion on this. We have found, and I think other groups will find alternate uses. We can always bring it back if we need to. But if the basic, I think if you take that out, I think the shell is there based on the ideas that have been talked about here.
All right, all right, then we have a motion to friendly amendment. That would be remove item number 3. The seconder was Mr. McKechnie. Any question on that, Mr. McKechnie, on the movers removal?
No, let's just get her done.
Okay, Madam Clerk, you're comfortable with that change? Thank you very much. Members of council, we have a motion in front of us then. It's item 1 and 2. The first item is essentially to receive the report. And item number 2 is to approve the establishment of the COVID-19 Community Assistance Program, including a creation of a $10,000 initial fund, dollar for dollar public matching amount up to an additional $10,000 of municipal funds. All right. I'm ready to call the motion. All those in favor? Those opposed? And the motion carries.
My last word is thank you, council, but
Thank you very much. And so now we will have to manage that once that all comes forward to us. And now we have a item number 5.2, which is the resumption of council to regular order. It is recommendation, be it resolved, be it resolved, council of the Township of Cleary hereby one, receive COU 003-2020, resumption of council to regular order, report for information. And item 2, approve the resumption of a regular council meeting schedule, including the reinstatement of the previously canceled May 4th and May 6th, 2020 meetings. And item 3, direct staff to implement the necessary digital capabilities to allow full public access and participation in all future open council meetings. I assume moved by Councillor Patterson. Am I wrong? Mover, seconder, Councillor McKechnie. Very good. I'll speak to this first, if you don't mind, Tom, because this has to do with council meetings. And as the chair and the mayor, I have an opportunity to call council meetings or cancel council meetings or act on behalf of the municipality when there's an emergency. So yes, we are in a special emergency council meeting right now. And that's because we are in an emergency situation at this time. And yes, we are going to be resuming, let's just consider it a more regular council meetings and perhaps even fall right back to our approved council dates that were approved, which I believe our next one would be May the 11th, which is the next one, I believe, on our full calendar. And yes, we're going to be returning back to that because frankly, our community and our citizens and our residents and taxpayers want to know what's going on in their council. And so that's important to me. We're definitely going to be continuing to do that. And the second thing is the digital capabilities to allow public participation. There's another report on this agenda that also outlines a report from the clerk about participation. We've already amended our procedural bylaw to allow participation, and you're going to hear that a little more in the report that's coming. And I think we will continue to do these type of meetings while we're in an emergency. I think that once an emergency is over and we return back to our chambers, which I'm thinking are a little more comfortable than all of us sitting here like this, although I don't mind my basement, to be honest, but the reality is that it's much more appropriate for us as a council to meet in a public place like this, like the town hall. Yes, we're going to be returning to that. The direction to cancel all meetings came from me after consulting with the emergency operations team and the clerk and the CAO. And that came about simply because the staff who work very hard to prepare these meetings and all of our senior staff who prepare reports for our meetings needed time to work on a pretty specialized report, which we will be receiving in our in-camera portion of tonight's meeting. So that is the reasons. And I'm sorry to advise you, Councillor Patterson, as the mayor, I have to make these type of decisions during emergencies, and that's what I had to do. I advised you all that that I made these changes and I made these directions, and I didn't see any feedback or pushback at that time. But certainly following that, there was a lot of chatter about concern, and I've been very open about how we're proceeding with council. I've implored each of you to reach out to me, to talk to me, to give me phone calls, give me your thoughts, and I'm there to help you as much as you are there to help me, and I appreciate it very much. So those are my comments, Mr. Patterson. I'll give the floor to you. I'm sure you have a few things you'd like to say.
well, actually, I'm pleased with the progress that we're making to get back to, and I don't want to get tangled up in the words. When I use the term regular, it's small r regular. I know what our procedural bylaw talks about emergency, special. regular, and we're not in regular times, but we can meet on a regular basis. And sounds like that's our intent. I know the clerk has done their work, her work in terms of trying to get us up to speed and fully digital, and don't anticipate being back in chambers for some time. But as you say, there's work that we can do as councilors in our community, and we need to meet as council to make some decisions. So that's the impetus behind the report. I really don't have that much more to say. I am open to friendly amendments, given the time that's passed, with precise changes of some of the meetings that we canceled, the May 4th and the May 6th, the strategic budget meeting and the procedural matters one. I realize that we have to realign what those are, but I'd like to see them back in the calendar so that we can start thinking about them. The public can know that that's coming up. But that's all I have to say.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that, because believe me, Tom, it was, and I say Tom in a friendly way, I believe me, it was a difficult decision to cancel that, because it is an important aspect of our work, and that is to do strategic planning when it comes to budgets. And so I'm very much supportive of having that process move forward. I also am very aware that the stress level on our staff has been elevated during this emergency. And so I honestly gave them the time to do the work that they needed to do, to one, deliver the essential services that this community needs, and two, to protect the residents and the staff who work in our township, and then to give them the time to do a little bit of strategic thinking themselves about a report about our community and the future staffing of our community. So I see the CAO is joining. If you don't mind, I'm going to go right to him, and then I'll look for questions from the floor. Go ahead, Mr. CAO.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a couple of comments. So number one, with respect to getting back to normal business, staff are extremely supportive of Councillor Patterson's position. And I think Your Worship you will allude to the meeting we had on my days all run together yesterday afternoon, that staff are prepared at this point in time to recommend we absolutely do that. You heard me make some comments early on about on Wednesday night of last week, Oral Madani tried to get back to regular operations with a public meeting. And I think every municipality in Simcoe is leaning that way. So staff are supportive of getting back to regular scheduled meetings. We are, believe it or not, the planning department are receiving a lot of inquiries. We're trying to do virtual consultation, and therefore there is a need. The Public Works Department are in the middle of a huge campaign to generate millions of dollars to support infrastructure in Clearview, and we're going to need some dates that we can count on to move that process forward. With respect to the other two meetings, particularly with the procedural bylaw, I don't think staff are not of the opinion that this is a good time to change how we do business. It's difficult enough trying to have a virtual meeting following the rules that we're generally been familiar with. That does not mean we don't need to have that meeting. It's on a priority list for staff to switch how the procedures of council operate. But yes, put it back on the calendar. It's just going to have to be shoved down significantly down the line. And with respect to the budget, similarly, that strategic budget meeting needs to occur. Staff are the ones that sometimes push for it. But I think it's going to be more in line with we start the beginning of 2021. I don't mean move it to 2021. I mean the 2021 budget, end of July. Let's hope we're back to some semblance of normal by then. And because the last 6 weeks, staff have been working on business continuity plans, quite frankly, and those things have not been a priority. I apologize for that. They haven't, but staff were given that clear direction that they weren't, and business continuity was paramount. However, we still support moving them down the line and getting back to regular scheduled meetings. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Sage. Don't go away in case there's any questions there. I appreciate what you're saying. And by the way, thank you for all the efforts that you and the senior management have been doing during this emergency crisis. Okay, council, anybody who's got any questions or comments? Questions that they would like to drop in? Councillor McKechnie.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I'm glad to see this on the agenda. I'm really looking forward to getting back to a regular schedule. Small R, as Councillor Patterson said. With respect, Mr. Mayor, you and I, we do differ on a lot of things, and one of them is the interpretation of this procedural bylaw. But we're getting back to business, so you know we'll agree to differ on that. One thing that I would like to bring to the attention of the rest of council is that this is a special meeting that we're in right now that the mayor has called, and he has the authority to call a special meeting at any time. But it has to be stressed that there's restrictions on what can and can't be discussed in the special meetings. For instance, we have to adhere strictly to the agenda. And even on the last issue, I thought that maybe we were starting to venture away from that in a couple of areas. But anyway, I think it's important that we do get back to the regular council meetings because with the regular council meetings, we can have public participation, deputations, presentations, and new business, which we cannot have in a special or an emergency meeting. So I'm glad to have this, I'm glad to have this report, and I fully support the recommendation to get back to a regular agenda of meetings.
Thank you very much. And I appreciate that you and members of council acknowledge that in our last item on the discussion that we were certainly drifting away from where we needed to be. So thank you for recognizing that. And I know that I thought I brought that up, that we were perhaps drifting off. So I'm glad we came back online. Thank you very much. I see that the clerk is in there, but I'm going to go to the deputy mayor who has his hand clearly up. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Burton.
Thank you, Your Worship. The comment that I have is yeah, going back to regular meetings with the small r is I don't have a problem with that. The problem I have with this motion right now is it states about rescheduling those two meetings that were missed, and as the CAO indicated, one of those was dealing with budget issues, I believe. So it's the I think we need to change the wording to the rescheduling at a later date. The problem is I can't look at what the motion actually says and do this video thing at the same time. So maybe the motion could be read so we have a clear understanding. Again, thank you.
Okay, no problem. I could happily read it again. I see that the mover of the motion has his hand up, so I'll go to him. Councillor Patterson, go ahead.
Okay, well, that particular part says they approve the resumption of a regular council meeting schedule, including the reinstatement of the previously canceled May 4th and 6th, 2020. And my comment was to this is that I am open to what we call a suggestion friendly amendment. And so, and as the CIO said, and I appreciate his comments, it's not going to be May 4th and May 6th. It'll still be a scheduled event in our schedule. And I think I would accept the fact that I can add the words of the deputy mayor at a later date. And I think the reasonable test of reasonableness will be that the May 4th strategic budget is the kickstart our 2021 budget, and the procedural meeting is to reform the way we do business. And of course, that would be best when we get into a regular schedule. We get back to normal. So I expect that those dates would be pushed out into, June, July, August, some time frame, whatever suits council and staff in particular, because they need to support us on the procedural one, the clerk's office.
All right, Councillor Patterson, I appreciate that. It should be no surprise to members of council or members of staff that May the 11th and May 25th are scheduled council meeting dates that have been approved by our a motion that happened, I'm going to guess in November, was it, that may have set our council schedule for 2020. So I'm comfortable going back to regular meetings on the 11th and the 25th. And perhaps what I would suggest to the mover of this motion was that to answer your question about the May 4th and May 6th meetings. So one of them is a budget strategic meeting. The other one is a procedural bylaw meeting, that we would set the dates at the 25th meeting. So when we meet as a council on May the 25th, we will have a report or a simple motion that could be brought forward through the clerk's office, and we'll look at calendars, and perhaps through our Admin Assistant Jennifer Kane-Piercy, she could poll some of our counselors to determine some possible dates and times to do that. To be honest, that style of meeting, by the way, if I may, I believe that it should be held as much as in person as possible, because there's good ways to communicate, when you're in person rather than in this Zoom setting. So I would hope that we would be able to follow the guidelines of the province and be able to meet as a group. I mean, we're a member of 9, so we might have up to 20 people in the room. So let's hopefully we can get to that number. Madam Clerk, would you like to speak? Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I just wanted to make a few comments, and then I'm going to ask Mara Burton to also pipe in and share her thoughts about planning public meetings. So the first comments that I wanted to share with the group is I belong to a group called the Simcoe County Clerks Group, and all of the clerks and deputy clerks for in all of Simcoe County are part of that group. And the one question that I asked them last week was, when are you going to start your regular sessions again? And everyone that participated in that call said within the next week or 2 weeks, they're going to be starting their regular sessions again. So certainly Clearview's response in holding special and emergency meetings has not been out of the norm that's been happening in Simcoe County. It seems like it's been quite a long haul since we've had a regular meeting. And I think that just speaks to the fluid situation that's happening every day. Every day we're responding to new information and new ways of doing business. And so we've had a lot of information to digest over the last month. So I think perhaps, getting back to regular sessions is great, but keeping in mind we'll still have to make those important decisions as well. The reason I wanted to speak, though, is I wanted to speak directly to item number 3 in the agenda, and that is about opening up the meeting completely to the public. So I'm looking at the procedure bylaw amendment that council did pass at the emergency session, and I know that I'm maybe speaking before my report, but I think, depending on the actions that happens during this motion, it might make my report not relevant. So in that procedure amendment, council did decide that all public participation and delegations would be in writing only, and certainly I would support that. The logistics of trying to arrange virtual delegations and public participation, it is going to be a little challenging. It doesn't mean that we can't do it, but we will certainly have to deploy more resources in order for that to happen. And I know that Mara has some comments concerning planning public meetings and how her colleagues are handling the public meeting portion regarding virtual delegations compared to receiving written comments. So I would ask her to comment on that at this time with your worship's permission.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk, for that. And I also look forward to your report that's later on in our agenda. So we're going to be talking about it twice. Mara Burton, nice to see you and welcome to our council meeting.
Thank you. Thank you, Worship. Yes, so actually we have talked with Harold Elston, our lawyer, to ensure that we would be in compliance with the Planning Act if we were to receive only written correspondence prior to the council meeting. So that is something that he has confirmed we can do. I believe there are other municipalities that are doing that as well. What we do is we ensure that in the notice of the public meeting that we clarify how they, the information, their concerns, comments, support, and otherwise would be portrayed to us in writing ahead of the meeting. And then that way what we would do at the public meeting is we would advise council of the correspondence that we've received, and we would ensure that you have a copy of everything in front of you. And that way, and then of course, as we normally do, when we do a follow-up report back to council with a recommendation, we would be reporting on that correspondence as well. And then what we would be looking for is to have the applicant make a presentation. They could be Can you hear me now?
Got you now. Go ahead.
Yeah, so it's that nasty computer thing that just all of a sudden mutes you. But anyway, then what we could do is we could have the actual applicant make their presentation to council, and then that presentation would be made available to the public ahead of time. And of course, as per our normal process, if people wanted to follow up with us afterwards, they could certainly do that as well prior to our making a recommendation to council.
Okay. I'm impressed that we're allowed to continue with public meetings in the Planning Act portion and by email input. I believe it's interesting that when we have public meetings, we still are able to acknowledge that we have received pro or against or for or against comments, and staff take those into consideration when they prepare their final report. But I'm surprised that we're allowed to receive those during the meeting. So that's an interesting bit of legislation that came from the ministry. That's my comment. Go ahead, Messenger Burton.
Yes, and that's up to council if they wish to receive, if they wish to do what Oromadante did, which was had emails coming in live and then having the director report to council live. We could consider doing that. That's not what other municipalities are doing. Other municipalities that are going ahead that I know of are actually receiving the correspondence ahead of the meeting. And it's not necessarily a live transmission going back and forth between the applicant and the but that is certainly an option if you want to give it a try. It could be a little bit challenging, but I'm always up for a challenge if that's something that council wishes to do.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you very much. Don't go away in case there's any questions. Members of council, do you have any questions on this discussion so far in regards to the item 3 of the motion? Yes, Councillor Patterson.
So good. It's to Tamara. So good. Yeah, the meaning of my full participation by digital capability was a reference to the email potential, or yeah, I thought that would be the simplest way. So I'm glad you're open to that. But either way, both would be fine. I mean, like at a public meeting, we don't know what people are going to say ahead of time. So as a counselor, I don't need to know what the public the comments are. Obviously, the presentations from the applicant or their agent, we get those, and they'd be expected to send them to us anyway. So I think that's consistent with my point 3. That we try some, and if it doesn't work, well, we'll try something else. But I think we make the effort there.
All right, thank you very much, Councillor Patterson. Anybody else with any questions or comments? Not seeing any hands moving. Okay, Madam Clerk, there's a motion on the floor. It has had an amendment to it. Do you recall what the amendment was, or do I go to Patterson for that? Go ahead, Madam Clerk.
No, it was just item number 2. The added wording at a later date was added to that. So the May 4th and the May 6th previously scheduled meetings.
Just want to make sure you had that.
Yeah, would be reestablished, and staff would put something on the agenda for the May 25th meeting.
That's what I'm hoping.
So that council could agree on some dates. And I just wanted to receive clarification, and I think I just got it from Councillor Patterson, and that is that he means the necessary digital capabilities to allow full access. That just means by email. Okay.
Thank you very much, Councillor Patterson. Okay, we got that. Mr. CH, I see you joined us. Please jump in.
No need to, Your Worship. Pam asked the question that I knew she wanted to ask, and that's great.
Okay, well, that's great. See, we got a good team here. All right. Seeing, Councillor Patterson, one more time.
No, just quickly, I just wanted to recognize the suggestion that you made, Doug, that, and I do mean that in a friendly way as well, that we just set the dates at our May 25th date, but later date or is sufficient, but we could make the amendment that to be set at the May 25th, 2020.
Thank you.
Just so we're all prepared.
I appreciate that. I mean, I don't think you need to put that in the motion, but I think that's the direction that I would like to see. You know, I want to get this all back to regular too. I really do. But I mean, this is an emergency situation. I think we have, we've come through it pretty well so far. I think we need to be optimistic that we will see this emergency coming to an end, but I don't think it's going to happen quickly. So we need to be acceptance of the fact that we need to be flexible in our scheduling and in how we do our business every day. So I think that this is a good target to aim for right now. I feel confident that we can get some technology in place or get some advice from IT individuals or even get some communication out there about the availability to the public to access our meetings in a participatory way. So I'm comfortable with everything we've been talking about on this, and I think the motion's going in the right direction. So I'm comfortable with that. I hope that everybody appreciates that this is not this is certainly not simple, but we're doing the best we can, and I think we're doing very well. So anybody else? Okay, then I'm prepared to call the motion as friendly amended with a mover and seconder. Members of council, those in favor? And that is carried. Carried. Thank you very much. Thank you for that, as amended. Council, we're going to go on to Parks, Recreation, and Culture report, which is PCR 007-2020. I'll read the recommendation, and then I believe, yes, Mr. Vachon is joining us, and I believe also Amanda's there. Yes, she is. Okay, so she's very much involved with this. Thank you. And Mr. CAO and clerk as well. Recommendation, be it resolved that Council of the Township of Clearview hereby, 1, receive PCR 007-2020, the COVID-19 Tourism Support Plan 2020 report for information, and item 2, approve the plan to provide immediate support to the tourism, local tourism, and business sectors. First of all, mover and seconder, please, on the motion. Mr. Walker, Mr. Broderick, and the motion is on the floor. Mr. Vachon and Miss Murray, nice to, by the way, I have not seen Amanda Murray in about 6 weeks. Nice to see you. Welcome aboard. Mr. Vachon, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. And again, yeah, nice to see you all as well. It's been a while. So hopefully you all have had a chance to see my report, as well as the tourism and local business support plan that we put together. So I've asked Miss Murray to join us today. She was the one that put most of this report or this plan together. She's heavily involved with our partnered stakeholders, being South Georgian Bay Tourism or RTO7 or Simcoe County Tourism. So she was able to gather a lot of good information and put this plan together. Also, Council, please keep in mind that Miss Murray started working on this plan probably about 4 or 5 weeks ago. Things change quickly, as you all know. So obviously it's a living and breathing document, but some things, some action items may have already been worked on, may have actually already started to be, pursued. So anyways, we're definitely available to answer any questions, Your Worship, and Miss Murray is available as well if there's any questions or suggestions that council may have.
Okay, very good. And I appreciate, you're absolutely right. This is a very fluid situation, and changes are announced sometimes hourly. Again, as I said earlier in my last comment or last section, is we need to be flexible, and so that's very important. Something for council to know, I have participated in 2 meetings or teleconference meetings with the Minister of Tourism, Ms. McLeod, and I believe there's one actually scheduled for tomorrow. So I may even be a part of that one as well. There's also a lot of work going on across the whole region with tourism activities. And I know that our Amanda Murray has been very much involved with that. So council, we have the 2 experts here on this report. Anybody got any questions or comments about the report? Looking for questions from councilors or Deputy Mayor. Mr. McKechnie, Councillor McKechnie, please go ahead.
Thanks very much, Your Worship, and I suppose to Amanda to answer these questions. Amanda, on the first page of the support plan, let me see here, says something about 4 businesses. Work with 4 businesses to post a listing on their windows. That's item 2D. Why just 4 businesses? So that's question number 1. Question number 2 is further down that page. You've got Discover Clearview at Home. Can you just expand on that a little bit for me? You know, I've read it and I'm not exactly 100% sure what you're getting at there. And looks interesting though from what I've read. And lastly, right at the bottom, it's the Recovery Task Force. Have we started on a task force yet, or is this just something that you're recommending? Those are my 3 questions.
Thank you, Councillor McKechnie. Amanda Murray, would you like to jump in on a couple of those, and perhaps we'll be able to help you out? Welcome.
Sure. Thank you very much, Your Worship, and through you to Councillor McKechnie. Just with regards to point 2D, which was working with local businesses, I recognize that not all of our residents have access to reliable internet service. So to rely just exclusively on posting information online may circumvent some of those residents who don't have online access. And the reason for only 4 businesses would be just to try to work very closely with the local businesses, such as grocery stores or hardware stores that would be in each of our former townships, so that residents who are on the streets doing pickups or having to continue to go to essential services would still be able to access an up-to-date list of those other businesses that were providing, let's say, delivery or takeout. 4 seems like a manageable number. I mean, again, this is a fluid document. If there's more of a need, then that would be great. But I definitely don't want to ask businesses to, you know, rely on always posting up-to-date information. Adding it one more thing onto their list of things they have to do every week. By keeping it at 4 would just be easier to control. Second point on the Discover Clearview at Home, this is almost a 2-step plan. Our township is one of the few townships that doesn't have an Instagram account. And we realize that a lot of people right now are online, they're accessing social media platforms. And a good way to strike that engagement and to increase it, working with Drew Hale with communications, is Discover Clearview at Home would just be a series every day posting those unique pictures of Clearview Township to encourage people to say, look what we have here as a tourism asset. Look at all these beautiful things. And when we're ready to welcome you as a visitor, come on in. But right now, learn about our township, learn about our heritage and our history at home while you're surfing social media. And then the very last point, just in general for council to be aware of, at this point, we have not taken any steps at all to implement a recovery task force. This is just one of the proactive approaches that some of our surrounding municipalities in both Simcoe County and Grey County have already started. It would certainly be something that our department would be involved, and obviously anybody else that would want to be involved there. Though at this point, there are no terms of reference, there's no long-term plan. This would just be the idea that we would be able to come up with some solutions that would best fit the needs of our community.
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Murray. I see there's a couple of follow-ups there. I just want to add though on the recovery task force, certainly you heard the CAO mention, it seems like an hour ago, about the United Way. The United Way are working on some of those things across the whole county, and the county themselves have through their economic development committee that our deputy mayor, deputy warden sits with, they are working on some recovery work as well. And it's certainly on our radar that we're looking to do some task force recovery type activities, although they may be really quick or simple, or they may be complicated and deep, but it's very, very flexible. McKechnie, you were going to follow up, and then I saw Patterson. Just quickly, anybody else? Okay, go ahead, Doug.
Just one quick question or one quick comment, and thanks very much, Amanda. I appreciate you answering all those questions. That Discover Clearview at Home, I think that's a great idea. I didn't see the Creemore Echo mentioned in there. Just seems like an ideal fit for the Creemore Echo to me. And I know in Ward 2, everybody reads the Creemore Echo. For some, it's the highlight of their week to get that. So no, I think that would be an ideal fit. So thanks very much.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Again, back to the commentary about us being flexible and being reactive to changes that come very quickly. I can appreciate that those that work in the print media are having a little bit of a challenge trying to stay up to date and fully inform their readers, because they can only print once a week in the case of the Echo. And so I know that they do some digital work, they do some postings online, and other media sources do some of that as well. So I appreciate what you're saying there, Councillor McKechnie. Certainly, we do appreciate having our local media provide service for us to help us get the word out. Very good. Councillor Patterson and then Councillor Lamers, looking for any other hands? Not anymore. Councillor Patterson, go ahead.
Great, thanks, Terry. Thanks, Amanda. This is really good news that we're taking this in our community. We've identified, one of the ways to help our businesses is to bring customers back to not their door now, but at least their curbside, and to help them in any other way. So there's a lot of good ideas in there, and I think you're going to get as you know, Amanda, when you come to the Creemore BIA, and I'm sure the same is with the Clearview Chamber, that any help is needed there. So I appreciate that. Is there any thought to, and I forget the actual program's name, but the province sponsored an internet service, a 360 video. They had a contractor come down and work with individual businesses. I know that's true in Creemore, to try to bring something like that back as an assist program in this support plan.
Ms. Murray, I think you might be speaking of the digital downtown program that was operated. Yes, go ahead, Ms. Murray.
Yes, thank you. The Digital Main Street program is still running. It is through the Small Business Enterprise Center and the Business Development Center in Collingwood, which services all of South Georgian Bay. And any business can access those resources. There was a few very successful businesses in Creemore that originally took advantage of that program. I can certainly forward the contact information again. His name is Ben, and be able to get him looped in again with everybody in the Clearview Chamber, as well as the Creemore BIA. But that program is still existing, as well as the resources that are found on Tourism Simcoe County and South Georgian Bay Tourism websites. Both of those outline a number of free online programs that are made available to all of our business community. Things like how to set up Facebook pages, how to do live videos, ways that we can support the business community.
Thank you very much. Are you a follow-up to Councillor Patterson? Is that what you're looking for?
Yes, thank you.
Just follow up. Yep.
We're reaching out to Ben, Amanda, to do that, and before we knew you were doing this. So maybe it's something we can coordinate with at least the BIA. And I know the Clearview Chamber was hoping to do something like this, but they're financially challenged, I guess, a little bit. And so that's why I asked if they could do it. So maybe a little bit of coordination there. I absolutely think and appreciate you putting it in here that a recovery task force, I'll put it this way, forget the bureaucracy, a recovery plan for our businesses across the township is really would be essential. We hope that we're resilient. We hope we're going to bounce back, but it's going to be a ramp up, not a complete startup. So I would, that might be a resource that we could consider and really become a round table for our businesses, the ones that want to participate, and how best to ramp up again once we're clear of COVID, or at least starting to get out of the malaise. Thanks for the report. It's very timely. I hope that it seems to have what we need right now and what we can do in the immediate future and what we can do in the long term. So I appreciate the effort.
All right, thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor
Oh,
Lamers is.
sorry, one other question. Sorry, Mayor. Amanda, do we have to inject any funds in on the digital downtown, or is it still on the checkbook of the province?
Ms. Murray?
It's my understanding that Digital Main Street is still continuing for 2020 through the coffers of the province funding. But I can certainly look for clarification on that and report back.
Yeah, I think we should get some clarity on that. Last time I spoke to Ben Frisch, he was wrapping up sometime here in 2020. So it's just, that might be a question for the minister tomorrow on the phone call. Thank you. Good point, Councillor Patterson. Councillor Lamers?
Thank you, Your Worship. It's to do with the fresh from Clearview markets. Are you getting them set up now? There's some people looking for plants and stuff to start planting in the springtime. They're having a hard time. I know we have some vendors out there that has some stuff for sale.
That's an interesting question. Mr. Vachon or Murray, or Ms. Murray, do you have anything?
Yes, thank you very much. So this plan was originally put together about 5 weeks ago when farmers markets at the time were deemed non-essential. Now there are elements of a farmers market that has been reverted back to being essential, and the Farmers Market Ontario and the health unit has some very, very strict guidelines as to how that would work. My plan actually moves towards a digital version, and working with Tourism Simcoe County, there might be an opportunity to explore a click and collect whereby we promote vendors and farmers who have curbside or online pickup, that they could actually make the transactions directly through their platform. I will admit I am not an IT person, so digital transactions is maybe a little bit outside my wheelhouse, but the idea is that we would connect the consumer with the farmer. Right now, though, there are a few of our local farm markets that are very active on social media. Individuals like Rural Roots or Giffin's Country Market and A&D Birdseed outside of Stayner, they all have updated their websites to handle online orders and online consultations. So I feel that the businesses are probably quite a few steps ahead of where we are at with this plan. But certainly that is why I included it in that kind of that medium length time frame, that it's going to take a few more weeks to really develop. Is there a need that we need to solve in terms of connecting those consumers to businesses? And B, what does that solution look like? Is it digital or is it in person-to-person delivery? So I hope that answers your question. It's not quite as direct as it probably sounds.
Okay, it's complicated. Are you comfortable, Councillor Lamers? Yes. Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Burton, were you next? And then Councillor Walker, is that right? Nothing from Burton? Councillor Walker, go ahead.
Thank you. There we go. Thank you, Your Worship. Just a quick question to Amanda then. So we will not know the markets, the physical markets that we have had in the past. Is that correct? They are going to be a virtual or a, as you just talked about, a person-to-person contact. We won't have the big markets in Stayner and New Lowell and in Premar. Those big physical markets that we've had in the past will not happen this year. And the reason I'm asking is because if they aren't going to happen, then there are some decisions that have to be made shortly, so that there are some spin-offs that have to be addressed and looked after if those markets are not moving forward. I just wondered if we have any idea on if, you know, is there a chance that things will move forward, or are we looking at not going to at all?
You know, I think Councillor Walker, as a general thing, every business, including those that operate farm markets, need to reinvent themselves during this crisis and how they're going to come out of it. So we're hoping that we can do something. Perhaps Mr. Vachon or Ms. Murray has any comment about what a farmer's market could look like.
Thank you, Your Worship, to Councillor Walker. I don't think we've actually made a decision yet if we're going to have farmers markets or not. We think we know where it's heading. It kind of goes hand in hand with the support staff that's required to pull off these markets, and that's obviously part of our discussions a little later. But yeah, I think the feeling is amongst all the communities and stakeholders is that the farmers markets will be, like you said, either a virtual or a strict modified version of a farmers market. But I think we feel pretty comfortable to say that to have a full-blown farmers market with bands and alcoholic beverages and all that kind of stuff, we don't think it's going to happen. But I mean, things can change quickly. The province could announce in 2 weeks that everything's up and going, and perhaps we can pull off farmers markets for the last 4 weeks of the summer. Who knows? I think we want to kind of keep the doors a little open, but today, if we're talking about today, it'll be a challenge.
Yeah, it's always a challenge. If all things being normal, the challenge we would be having would be worrying about rain on Thursday nights or rain on Saturday mornings, and because that always impacts our farmers market anyway. Ms. Murray, do you have any more comment about farmers market on that talk?
Yes, if I could just add one last comment to Terry's point. Unfortunately, ourselves as a department, we don't have the final say anyways. Our plan would have to be approved by, in our case, the Simcoe Muskoka Health Unit. On an annual basis, all of our farmers markets are regulated by the health unit anyways, regardless of whether COVID. However, they've taken, I believe there's about a 10-point plan that would have to be met in order to have the farmers markets approved. So it is certainly, evolving at the best of time. So too early to speak to it right now.
All right, thank you very much for that. Any other members of council have any questions or comments of our staff on this report? No, not seeing any. I have one question in regards to the proposal underneath short-term plans regarding radio campaign. Amanda, you've done some great radio work for us in the past, and I know that we've established good relationships with a lot of the broadcast companies in the area. Can you give me an idea on the radio reach that this might do in regards to, we have local radio, but if we're looking for tourism messaging or celebrate, and discover Clearview messaging, is that something that we can to look to bigger markets or markets further afield than just our local market? Ms. Murray?
Certainly. So Mayor Measures, I did select the local 2 radio stations in Collingwood that do serve the immediate South Georgian Bay area. And the reason for that is I would like to make sure that our message does align with the province's message, which is stay home. However, we want to inform our local residents and people who are living and working in the immediate Clearview area that businesses are still open and that there are still essential services, including supporting our downtown businesses with their alternative methods of providing their level of service. So in terms of the direct reach, I would say it ranges from about the Thornbury area over to and including Springwater, and perhaps going down south into Mulmer, the kind of north end of Dufferin County. I think though that it's again important that the messaging is not necessarily the traditional tourist message, which would go beyond that 40-kilometer or 100-kilometer radius, that we actually try to keep it centralized so that we are promoting our local businesses to the residents that live in the immediate area.
Exactly. That is exactly how I was hoping this was being portrayed. I just want to make sure that that opportunity to make that clear, that we want to continue to support the local businesses with this plan. So that's what we're going to do. And the people that are going to shop are those that are going to, leave their home to go do specifically shopping and then specifically get back home. I don't see people getting in their car and driving, to Vaughan to go shopping for groceries and come back. They shop locally for their groceries or their needs. So that's important at this time during this crisis anyway, at this time. Anybody else, any other questions or comments? We've got a mover and seconder on the motion. All right, thank you, staff, for participating in this. Council, we have a mover and seconder. We have a motion in front of us. I've read the motion. At this time, I'm prepared to call the motion. All those in favor? And that carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. Murray and Mr. Vachon. Thank you very much for joining us. Nice to see you guys. Okay, moving on in our agenda. Let me just find it here because I've covered it up with the report. Here it is. Ballpark lights. So this is for Mr. Vachon. Recommendation, be it resolved that Council of the Township of Clearview hereby one, receive a PCR 008-2020 ballpark LED light replacement project 2020 report for information. And item 2, approve enhancing the ballpark LED lights replacement project to include all 3 ballparks in Clearview Township as per the proposal and quotes received. Mr. Vachon, this actually is really good news. And bringing it forward at a time of a special council meeting is good because it's all about reacting when we can. Can I have a mover and seconder? Mr. Deputy Mayor, seconded by Mr. Lamers. Mr. Vachon, I know we got a lot to talk about tonight, but overall, I thought it was a great report. Have you got anything you'd like to add?
No, thank you, Your Worship. No, just that it's a very time-sensitive project. Obviously, that's why I've asked to put it on the agenda today. It's, we want to take advantage of these grants. We're extremely fortunate that the Save on Energy grant is still open as of today. We want to secure that grant as soon as possible, as well as, obviously there's a lot of energy savings. We have 3 ballparks in our township that desperately require it. We are unable to replace the existing lights. So this is extremely timely. I guess my last point is that, obviously we wouldn't install the lights until the pandemic is over. What we would just do is we want to purchase them, get them in our stock here so that we have them ready to go when it's time to install.
Excellent. And another item on your report too was the fact that you had a local company available to do the high lift work and the electrical work. That was great to see. Great participation from locals. Mr. Lamers, I saw your hand. Anybody else with a question? Go ahead, John Lamers. Oh, Mr. McKechnie's in there too. Go ahead, Lamers.
Thank you, Your Worship. Terry. On page 7 of your list there, which lights or shine patterns do you have?
Through you, Your Worship, are you referring to which style on page 7 under the specifications?
Yeah.
We are going with the 5 lens, so the 300 watt FLP 300. Does that answer your question, Councilor Lamers?
Would that be the FLGP 300 light? Is that the one?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Well, these things are going to light up the skies once we finally get them installed. Very good. Thank you very much for that response. Mr. McKechnie, you had a question? Looking for anybody else? Mr. McKechnie, and Mr. Walker. Mr. McKechnie, go ahead.
Just a quick one, Your Worship. It looks great, Terry. Thanks very much. The price looks good. It looks like we're going to save some money. Just curious, did we go through a tendering or quote process? Or because the price is so low, did we even have to go through that process at all?
Yes, through Your Worship, to Councilor McKechnie, yes, we did. So our salesman had requested 2, I think he might have even gotten 3 quotes. And yes, the other 2 were considerably higher than this one here, but yes, 3 quotes were received.
Very good. And Councillor Walker, thank you. Councillor Walker, anything?
All I want to say is price is right, timing's right, and rebates are still available. So I think it's an excellent opportunity to do 3 instead of for the price of 1 that 1 was going to cost us earlier on. So I think it's great timing, and let's get forward with this and get it done.
Thank you. Mr. Vachon, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to add, we also included the tennis court at the Ives Park and Stanner as part of that 71 lights. We're going to replace the tennis court.
Yeah, well, that's all. That park is all one big park, right? So it works fine.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. That's actually a nice extra bonus. Very good. All right, any further questions on this report? Thank you for the report. Council, you have a motion in front of you, and I'm prepared to call the motion. Councilors, all those in favor? And that carries. Thank you very much. Thank you, Terry. Appreciate that. And again, keep bringing forward reports that have savings in them. We appreciate that. Okay. All right, Council, moving on to finance, page 3. This is a straightforward report, which has to do with our COVID response. So we'll bring that forward here now. I believe our treasurer is here somewhere. Yes, she is. Okay, FIN 004-2020 regarding waiving penalty and interest on taxes. Recommendation be it resolved. The Council of the Township of Clearview hereby 1, authorize the tax collector to waive the penalty and interest for tax accounts beginning in March 2020 and lasting until the COVID-19 response is over. Can I get a mover and seconder, please? Mr. Deputy Mayor and Mr. Lamers. I see those hands real quick. I'm going to keep watching for other hands there too. Thank you very much. Madam Treasurer. Hi, Kelly. Great report. Can you outline any highlights in there you'd like to talk about?
The report is basically an extension of Council's resolution back in March. We originally just pushed the tax due date out till the 23rd and deferred penalties and interest until that time. This report is suggesting that we mimic the water and sewer report that Council approved to waive the penalties and interest until the emergency response is over.
Thank you very much. I think that's really clear, and it's good communication for us to tie these two items together. That's important. Council, any questions to the treasurer about this report or this action? Councillor McKechnie and anybody else? Councillor McKechnie, please go ahead.
Just one question. Who determines when the emergency response is over? Is that, are we taking our cue from the province on that issue?
Yes and no. Also the County of Simcoe, so we need to work together. Go ahead, Ms. Kelly or Kelly McDonald, if you have something to say.
No, exactly your response, Your Worship. It's we're technically under the emergency through both the county and the province. I would expect that if either lifts, both would lift, but again, it's not my decision.
Fair enough, and that is, I understand, the direction that would happen too. So we're all waiting for a date for this to happen, and we'll see how long this can hang on to us. Is that good, Mr. McKechnie? Does that help? You're okay, thank you. Anybody else with any questions to this report? This extension of the penalties and fines relief? Okay, thank you very much, Kelly, for your report. Council, we have a motion on the floor. It's been moved and seconded. It's to do with regarding relief for penalties and interest on taxes. And I'm prepared to call the motion. All those in favor? And that motion carries. Thank you very much, Council. Legislative services. We're going to speak about electronic participation, which it seems we already spoke about, but we'll have another report here for us. Thank you, Madam Clerk, for joining us. LS 007-2020, an electronic participation update recommendation be it resolved that Council of the Township of Clearview hereby 1, receive update electronic participation for information, and 2, direct staff to set up electronic public meetings for the purposes of the Planning Act and other non-statutory public meeting purposes. Okay, a mover and seconder on this one. Looking for a hand, Councillor Deneen and Councillor Walker. Thank you very much. We got a lot of hands already. Thank you guys for doing that. Hello, Madam Clerk. Is there anything further you want to add? We've already sort of talked about this, but please outline anything in this report that you'd like to highlight.
Sure. So we've already talked about the largest part of the report, so I won't reiterate that information. The part that I would like Council to focus on, though, is giving staff direction to start up planning public meetings and other non-statutory public meetings again. I'll ask Mayor to weigh in on that. But first, I just wanted to talk about non-statutory public meetings. So that would be something like the sign bylaw. Staff are anxious to get that underway so that we can start working on those initiatives. So that's an example of what we mean by non-statutory public meeting. So I will turn it over to Mara and she can provide you with some further information.
Thank you very much. Welcome back, Mayor Burton.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, actually, it's very helpful for us to be able to continue on with our public meetings. There is a 20-day notice requirement for most of our public meetings, and so having a regularly scheduled council meeting or certainly an advanced notice of that is very helpful so that we can make sure that we get notice to the newspapers and signage on the property and all the things that we need to do. All the information that we put on our website so that the public can get informed so that they can bring forward their comments. The other thing, as the clerk alluded to, is the sign bylaw. We would like to move forward with that relatively quickly. Originally, my plan was once you saw a draft sign bylaw that we would bring something back quickly so that we wouldn't be flooded with a number of applicants that are trying to sort of get ahead of that. And we are starting to see some billboard applications coming in now. So we would like to schedule that as soon as reasonable.
Very good. If I may, I'll just ask a question to Mara and then I'll open up the floor. The thing about Planning Act meetings, they need to be scheduled for a specified date and a specified time and a specified location. And so that's part of how we give notice, right? So what steps can we take to assure the public that we can continue to give those dates? I mean, we're going to set our regular council meetings and we're going to use those regular council meetings going forward. But what I'm concerned about is we had a little technical delay even starting this meeting tonight. That may delay things even further. You know how some of our council meetings, when we've been sitting in chambers, waiting for that 6:30 hour to come by, and then, we've got lots of other business that we're dealing with, and people end up sitting and waiting a long time. So is there any way that we can, when we notify people about a public meeting, that we can notify that they have to be flexible as well? I mean, it'll happen after this certain hour, but we don't know how long after. Can you help me out with that?
Yes, I think that is reasonable. We can certainly put something in our notice to say that it is anticipated that the meeting will start at 6:30, no earlier than 6:30. However, be advised that this is an active council meeting and that the actual public meeting may be delayed.
Yeah, it will happen that evening. It's just, I mean, we've been going for a couple hours here now. So there you go. So I'm just pointing that out. Members of council, any questions to the report or to the concept of what's been presented so far? Looking around the table, nothing? All right, well, there was my question for you. I hope that works out just fine. Okay, council, we have a motion has been moved and seconded. You've heard the discussion. I'm prepared to call the motion, and I'm calling the motion. All those in favor? And that motion carries. Thank you very much, Ms. Burton and Madam Clerk. And that completes the agenda for our special council meeting here tonight. We do have an in-camera session to go to in a moment. I will be reading the motion to go in camera, and then we will go to an in-camera. At the end of the in-camera meeting, we will come back for a brief live section, I guess, on our YouTube feed to pass the motion to adjourn, basically. The confirmatory bylaw and the motion to adjourn. Those are the two items that are on our public portion of our agenda that we'll be coming back with. So I know Councillor Broderick just left. I was just going to put it out there to the floor. Is there anybody with any comments or any questions or any updates from around the community for the good of the corporation in regards to COVID? Councillor Walker.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I just want to say that today the Stainer Lions, working together with the Stainer and Cashtown Tim Hortons, started a snack and go food package program, courtesy of a grant through LCIF and District 812. The Stainer Care Center and the Creedon Valley affects the Stainer Care Center and Creedon Valley staff breaks. It's 1 day a week every Wednesday, and it's twice a day, morning and afternoon shifts. And this program, we have enough funds, we will carry that through till the end of May. Just for community spirit, and
Yes.
we're still involved.
Thank you very much, Mr. Walker, and thank you to the Lions. Again, another great organization in our community that's there for us when we're having a lot of fun at the music market and park or when we're selling tickets for a car sale or whatever, but also there when our community is in need. So thank you for that. Anybody else have any quick comments before I call the motion? Miss Deneen, were you going to say something? I saw your hand waving around a minute ago. Oh, you're okay. All right, thank you. All right, thank you very much, Council. I'm going to now read the motion to go into closed session. And so I'll need a mover and seconder. Recommendation, be it resolved that the next portion of the meeting be closed to the public in accordance with S 239-2, item B and item D of the Municipal Act. It's a personnel matter about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, and also labor relations or employee negotiations regarding pandemic staffing. Can I have a mover and seconder to move in camera? Mr. McKechnie, Mr. Broderick. Very good. And so, Madam Clerk, record that, and I will call the motion. All those in favor? All right, thank you very much. That motion carries. Madam Clerk, we are now going to go in camera, so I'd ask for you to advise that we're disconnecting the YouTube feed, and I wish everybody a good evening. Thank you.